And I also know that being unemployed is not just about being jobless or being broke. It's also answering questions like, Auntie, when are you getting a job? Are you even applying? Why don't you start your own business? What do you do throughout the day? Questions like that.
As we know, unemployment is a change in status. It's actually, it's losing security in life. And with that comes a loss in relationships, a loss in identity, and your status in society. And this has a negative impact on your mental well-being.
Nowadays, your job or the work that you do is part of your identity. And when you lose your job, a lot of young people particularly, well, anybody actually, tends to feel like a piece of them is lost. And that can result in low self-esteem, this feeling that you are not worthy, feelings of low confidence, and you end up lacking the motivation that you would otherwise have if you were involved in a job where you were interacting with people. And you see this downward spiral, which ends up with challenges such as substance use, violence, deliberate self-harm, like suicide, anxiety disorders. I think the core of it all is that loss of self-esteem.
We were all going on about our lives, feeling like, you could be invincible. There was never a threat of a disease that would be easily transmitted. And suddenly comes, immediate lockdown. It's like, you suddenly, someone presses a pause in your life, and, you now have to rethink everyday activities. So with this hard lockdown, we found that certain industries were more affected than others. So if you look at the tourism industry, the catering, the hospitality industry, these are the industries where people rely on daily walk-in trade. And with the hard lockdown, everyone's forced to remain indoors. You can't go out, you can't go and buy food. And this impacts on people who actually relied on that kind of income daily.
COVID has fueled the already previously existing high levels of mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So at the moment, when you look at mental health, not globally, in fact, we're seeing an exponential rise of cases, suicide, and it's largely because of this massive treatment gap. The treatment gap is the availability of evidence-based care, which addresses some of these challenges.
Yes, lots of people have lost their jobs. We are looking at high rates of unemployment. And because of that, we're seeing heightened levels of stress. More people are unemployed. More people need a source of support, which is not readily available out there. And it does. The longer it takes you to find support in mental well-being, the longer it takes for you to heal. If you think about your day, your employment, what does employment give you? It gives you a sense of security. It gives you status. It allows you to make plans way in advance. And also knowing that you can materialize those plans. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. So when one loses that security, it impacts, besides your livelihood, it impacts on your role in your family. You would be the main breadwinner. Now you're not that breadwinner. And even with that kind of status comes this sense of authority. You can make decisions for people, and you can, give security to people. And I think that is then lost. But, it's also about social relationships. Friends that you had at one point may carry on with their lives. They carry on with their social circles, which does involve cost. And suddenly you feel isolated and excluded because you can't contribute to these social lifestyles.
I think part of the solution is going back to some of our old African traditional ways of doing things and communicating. If you look at traditional African values, we believe in in what we call Ubuntu, that African humanity, where we are in it together, where communities work together. We are drifting away from that. We are increasingly developing a very Western model of community where we function in these isolated silos, each family for itself. Gone are the days where my grandmother was everybody's grandmother. We need to revisit and go back to some of those values.
So I think it's so important to remember you're not alone. I mean, even before COVID, the economy was struggling. We are all, fully aware that the cost of lifestyles, the cost of living has increased. And there's very little resources to go around. So I think, understanding your situation, understanding that, yes, I'm unemployed, but my unemployment, is not all of me. It's not really my fault if the economy is doing bad. So, I think it's that self-blame that one has to move away from. People will sit and say, what could I have done to avoid this? And in some circles, this cannot be avoided.
Through the work that we've done at Friendship Bench, we found that training does help. You train the grandmothers, they provide therapy. But what is even more important is giving people space to share their stories, to talk about what they're going through in a non-judgmental way. So we respond with empathy, which is the ability for us to express respect and understanding of what we are hearing. We find that makes a huge difference. It actually moves a person from a point of wanting to harm themselves or take their own lives by suicide to a point of thinking, oh, actually there's hope. Because you see, when you don't have that sense of belonging, when you don't have that sense of purpose, you lose hope. And the question is, how do we instill hope? The first starting point of instilling hope in a person who has lost hope is giving them the space to share their story. So when I talk about community being a solution to a lot of our problems, it's because our African communities have a rich source of wisdom and knowledge about how to deal with conflict, how to deal with a whole range of issues that we face. Um, when you really think of African culture, it has its own inbuilt ways of providing therapy for those who are in need, those who are grieving, those who are unemployed, and so forth. And again, it takes me back to the whole idea of using non-professionals, to reach out to those in need.
Very important is that governments need to start allocating resources to community-based organizations, because it is these organizations in the community closest to the people on the ground that can provide, kind of support groups, can provide basic meals, can, even help people start up their own businesses, or can even help you, develop your CV such that you can become employable. So community-based organizations need to be capacitated.